Hello and welcome everybody to episode 11 of Altengrad City from City Skylines. In today's episode we will continue from the area we built last week, which was the place where, among other things, we built the old bridge. In this empty spot we will build a second train station. It's going to be a custom-made terminus station with multiple tracks and of course all kinds of other buildings and details around it. So like with most of these projects, it's important to first start with the main thing. So we are going to right away start building the train station, and after that is roughly done, we are going to continue with the rest of this area. So some, building blocks and things like that. So what exactly do I mean by custom-made station? Well, it's basically going to be a train station made of different kinds of buildings that are somewhat going to be working together to form one large structure that is going to be the train station. Now, what is the reason for this? Because, there are quite a lot of terminus train station, old-looking terminus train stations in the workshop. So why not just use them and, make it a lot easier for myself? Well, the thing is, with the terminus train stations in the workshop, there's not that many of them actually. There's only a handful, and they don't exactly look like I want to have them in the city, in this particular place, because they look very big. There are some train stations that look very big, and then there are some train stations that don't exactly fit this style. They are very grand, they are very ornamented and very nice, big looking. So that's not exactly what I really wanted to. Those are the kind of stations that have the big domes over the platforms, and they are very tall as well, even though the footprint might not be exactly all that big. So that's not really what I wanted. I really wanted to have some kind of a terminus station exactly like this. So some platforms and some like 2-3 level buildings, tall, max, something like that. But I wasn't really able to find anything like that, so I had to improvise. And I finally decided to create a train station that is going to be based on those terminus platforms. I think that's part of the modular train station project made by Titan. And the rest of the buildings around it are no train stations at all. The main building that's at the front of these platforms is some kind of a palace wing, I think. I'm not exactly sure. The darker brick building on the side of those platforms, I think that's actually a train station, a part of some kind of a train station, some Swedish train station, I think. But it's obviously not serving as a train station. It's just like a decoration building really on the side. And the entrance, the main entrance to the train station, like a fake entrance, obviously, so that it looks like it's an entrance, that... Oh yeah, that's actually a train station as well, so it is actually made of quite a lot of train station buildings. But you could have seen me that I converted one particular building as procedural objects or into procedural objects and kind of extended it to be at the same level as the roof of the palace wing building, and I made it so that it looks like it's some kind of a portal into the train station. So that originally was a train station building, but it was really tiny, and I just took the entrance portal out of it and made the platforms, for that disappear. So that's exactly how I made this custom train station, and that's pretty much it. That's the passenger part of that train station, because this train station is going to also have a cargo part. That's exactly what I'm doing right here with these tracks. Now, by the way, these tracks, as they come into the station, that is not going to be finished by today's episode, because this train station is definitely going to be more extended in terms of the tracks and all kinds of junctions and multiple tracks, and maybe even some maintenance building, and some smaller depot is also going to be part of this train station. But I'm not going to do that today, because I first want to finish some places around the train station, before we reach that part of the project. So we are still going to work on this part of the city, this part of the station, and later we are going to move and just complement the station with some more projects. All right, so there's probably going to be a lot of you saying that the train station needs some maintenance buildings and more tracks and stuff like that. So don't worry, it's not finished as of now. So it's going to be a lot bigger. Now, what am I doing in here? I'm just putting some buildings around the train station, really. We still need to figure out how we're going to do these riverbanks in here, especially where the terrain is a lot higher around the river, because the old bridge that we did was fairly close to the river, I mean, in terms of heights. But this place, as it approaches the train station is a lot higher than the bridge, and the buildings around it obviously need to kind of be at the same level as the station, and then we need to just figure out the height differences as we approach the river. So I decided to do these kinds of walls. Maybe this place, I was thinking that maybe I could probably build some sort of remnants of old city walls in this place as they approached the river, like the really old city walls. Like I said in some previous episodes, I think that I'm probably going to make the remnants of some more modern city walls somewhere else. So I'm considering the city to have had some like really old city walls around the really old town, and then probably some more modern walls around the bigger parts of the city. And that's probably some sort of wall that I would like to build, because I do have some nice assets for that from the workshop. So as we progress around these parts of the town, we are probably going to build something like that. But anyway, just finishing up these parts, like I said, building some keys and some things like that, basically preparing for some future projects, really. I'm not really going to finish these parts around the river, but it was important to at least get it done somewhat, and especially around the train station, the part of the train station that we are going to finish after today's episode, right? But all these places, I think I already mentioned it with some Aurelia episodes as well, that I'm probably going to be doing some bigger projects as the focus of the episode, for example, this train station. But around the train station, we obviously need to keep finishing the rest of the, let's say, not so interesting parts of the city. So some residential blocks and, all those kinds of things that are not all that super interesting to build. But they obviously need to be there so that they form, in total, they form the city as a whole, obviously. So between these palaces, the train stations, the square, there obviously needs to be the regular buildings as well. So that's kind of what I'm doing in this episode, even though this episode is mostly focused around the train station and this palace building, which I'm going to later detail and stuff like that. I'm thinking that the Terminus station that we are building in this episode is a lot older than the other train station that we already built a couple of episodes back. Now, the train station that we built already in that main city square, it's probably something that was a lot more conveniently built when people realized that the tracks are probably not going to end in Altengrad, and they need to continue into different parts of the country as well. Unlike this train station, the Terminus station, which was built with one purpose, and that was to serve to basically end some track that was going into Altengrad as probably some kind of a branch, maybe of like a bigger railroad. So in time, this Terminus train station probably became less important, and maybe it was also rebuilt a couple of times because people just needed it to be looking differently, right? So maybe that's the reason why the station building itself looks not so uniform. It's made of different buildings in the game, obviously. So it's a way to justify the positioning of the buildings, and obviously make it more believable that the train station was probably rebuilt a couple of times. So that's why there's buildings that look different around the main complex of the train station, and some different colors with those buildings and things like that, because I don't really have that much control over it, right? So it might be like that in the city. And obviously, as the time goes forward in the series, we might see some changes to the train station. We might even see the train station not being used maybe for some time. Maybe it's going to be made smaller, not larger, which is like a trend in these days to make everything larger. But maybe the train station was just not being all that used in time. But we will see how it's going to develop. So I already said that the train station is also going to have a tiny little portion for cargo traffic, right? So that's exactly what I'm going to build in here. I'm going to build some of these platforms for unloading and loading all the cargo. I decided to put these two tracks angled towards the main buildings, so it's just looking, you know, more interesting in here, and it's not just everything is just parallel, because that would be boring. This is much better. Putting some of these warehouse buildings, and later going to put all kinds of details in here, like these covers for the platforms, and you know, some more details that you're going to see in just a little while. So I decided to even extend this main terminal building, let's call it. It's probably going to be all kinds of offices these days, or even in modern days. These train stations usually belong to whatever company is maintaining the tracks, or you know, some railway companies maybe, and they're probably going to be just some kind of offices. These days they might even serve as some, I don't know, post offices maybe, and just some cargo administrations, you know, something like that. There's definitely a lot of need for some office spaces in these train station buildings. So that's exactly what would probably be inside the train station building. Now, the train station obviously needs to fit the rest of this area. I'm thinking that this entire area was probably reworked sometime when the train station itself was constructed. So it's definitely going to have, around the train station, it's definitely going to have all kinds of modern looking buildings that might be from the same time period as the station itself, so that the train station basically destroyed the project for the train station destroyed this part of the city when it was there before, probably consisting of some medieval structures even that were not exactly fulfilling their modern purposes. So the city administration just decided to completely rework this part of the city and build the train station in here, which is probably something that might happen again as we progress further in time, but we will see about that. So doing just some detailing around the cargo station part. I really wanted to detail this part because in City Skylines it's very convenient, and it's actually not all that super difficult with all the things that you have from the workshop to detail these industrial looking areas. You have all kinds of crates, all kinds of, you know, cargo thingies, and you can also do wonders with the surfaces. Unfortunately, you could have seen me do the platforms, the concrete platforms for the railroad as procedural objects, which means that I cannot put decals on it. And I really wanted to put some decals on it, especially some stains, some, I don't know, card marks, or you know, something like that. So it's not looking that displaying, but. Later, you know, I decided that it's fine because I'm going to just make the platforms really small, and actually quite a lot covered with these, you know, the roofs, the roofs over the platforms. In some places, obviously not everywhere, so that it's just varied slightly. And obviously putting some kind of those rail cars in there to make it look like it's being used. But it's probably it's definitely not the main cargo station for the entire city. It's probably just maybe like a post office train station, or just some light cargo station for local businesses and, you know, things like that. But it's definitely not going to be the main cargo station of the city. That's probably going to be somewhere further away from the city center, but it was just convenient to have some portion of already existing train station dedicated for cargo, right? So that's basically it for the train station. Like I said many times before, the train station is going to be extended, you know, past this place as we obviously progress with the city. So it's definitely not the last time we are doing any changes to the train station. And like I said, we also need to do some details, some buildings around the train station, and obviously do some kind of detailing in front of it also. Now, this is very important because the train station definitely was at this time period very important for any kind of outside or inside city traffic. Obviously, people didn't really have cars that much these days, and railroad was pretty much the only way for most people to just reach different cities and just go somewhere else from Altengrad. So. And it was also a thing of prestige, really. The train stations, they just really wanted to have the buildings looking very nice. Together with the detailing, or, well, in real life, obviously decoration, but in the game detailing around the entrances, so all kinds of benches in here, and lots of open spaces around these very important buildings, because obviously open space is by itself a very interesting thing in these city centers, because it just shows that people could afford to have the empty space in a very crowded city, right? So doing all kinds of benches, planters, even like a horse statue. I don't really have that many horse statues or any kind of statues really in the game, so I do need to recycle some of them from time to time, but I don't think I placed this one just yet. But I think that I'm probably going to place it a couple more times in the city, because statues are nice for these kinds of squares and empty places. And obviously we need to do the surfaces. I really couldn't imagine even how I would do the surfaces if I didn't switch the pavement texture for the cobblestone. It is kind of inconvenient for me because with the cargo part of this train station, I already wanted to have some concrete texture on the ground, so it is starting to be a problem that we are only having the cobblestone texture for the pavement, but in the end I managed to just overcome it by doing procedural object and doing that concrete blocks for the platforms, and it's fine. We don't need to have cobblestone absolutely everywhere. And obviously very important thing, doing these kinds of detailing around the train station. I decided that these residential blocks are going to be basically separated from the train station by these trees in there, which definitely makes sense. Train stations are very noisy, so doing something like that is definitely needed. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for today's episode of Altengrad. I'm just going to do all this kind of detailing, put the tram wires on the intersection, put all kinds of lamps and lights in there, and just do some tiny little details to just make the cinematics look very nice. So that's it. That's it for today's episode of Altengrad. Thank you guys for watching it. I hope you liked it. If you did, then you can always put a thumbs up underneath the video, share the video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. So I will see you with some next videos. Take care and goodbye.